Welcome, everyone, to Chirping Zebras, episode 52, the Andrew Peak episode. He's the defenseman on the Bruins, in case you don't know. Mark Riley alongside Gino Binda Jr. and Josh Dolan. We're on the interwebs, coming to you on Riverside. Before we get into it, we want to thank our sponsor, the Referee's Crease, your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. And also want to thank AOA Studios, even though we're not there right now, but they are the premier studio to tape anything you want to tape. And they also do all our editing and all our post taping work, I think they call it. So, boys, welcome. And what a week! We've had a great week of college hockey playoffs. We're into it now, so it's gonna play itself out over the next few weeks.
Oh yeah, the playoffs all kick off for all the conferences, this weekend, and should be fun.
Yeah. Well, we want to get right into it. We have a great guest tonight, and he not only played pro hockey, but also refereed from basically every league but the NHL, the American League all the way down, kind of like you did, Gino, and probably should be in the NHL, just like you, me, and a few other people we know. And he has a really cool business, the Sasyn Mental Edge Method, and he is one incredible guy, and we want to welcome Carl Sasyn to the show. Carl, welcome to the Zebras.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Love your guys' stuff, so thank you. Very humbling to be here.
Right on. I just want to also shout out that, Carl was on the our friends there, Team Stripes. He was on that podcast, so go check that out. And he was also a guest on our Monday night Referees Crease, our Monday night Zoom we do. I call it the Monday night quarterback, and we put it on for officials. We throw videos up there. We have guests like Carl. Sometimes we've had like some coaches, administrators on. So, go check that out. Every Monday night we put it on during the season, and try to get everybody better. It's like secondary training. So I really thank you for coming on, and I got more text messages and saying how beneficial that was, and you did a great job. So appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you. It was great being on there. It's just, it's sort of like I've been undercover for 25 years of my career. I really haven't been out in the spotlight at all. I just kind of go about my business, work in the same buildings as a local guy for the most part, get to know the teams, get to know the coaches, but I'm just trying to be that under the radar guy. Just show up, do my job, not ask for too much, and be honest, That's the way you stay in the cities, is being honest. You start lying to the players, you're lying to yourself, and you're a bum. They want nothing to do with you.
I mean, that's what they always say,
you're right.
No, they always say, like, you want to be, nobody wants to know who you were, like who the referee was, right? They don't want to know who the name was. Because if they know your name, you screwed up.
Is that what I was doing wrong all those years?
Well, they used to chant Riley sucked. That's how everybody knew your name.
That used to excite me in some weird way. I'll be honest with you.
You were hoping it translated into comedy show ticket sales.
Yeah. You got to play to your strengths.
Right. Well, you got to work to get to that level of disgust. I mean, it's awesome. But I mean, to go back to that quickly, I've had players actually tell me that when I come up and admit and own something I did, they're like, "That's why I like you, because you own it. You admit that you screwed up." And then they got two options: either to keep yelling at you, kick you like a dog, or just kind of turn their head and go, "Wow, the guy told the truth." And typically it's the latter of the two. Wow, he told the truth, and they move on. And like he said to me, he goes, "At least you don't do it that often." So for me, after 20-something years, for a player to tell me that, I was like, "All right, I'm doing something right." So
it's
wild. What's that?
No, they're smart and they get it. Yeah.
Oh, they get it.
Well,
but
some of them are.
Over the past, you're right. Some of the guys are still hard-headed, but just over the past year, when I started the mental performance business, 2 years, like all of a sudden meeting Nat and Ross, and then you, and then Gino, I've known you forever. I mean, did we work the Coast League together? I know we've known each other for a long time.
I don't know. I don't think we crossed paths in the coast, but we worked quite a bit down in through the years down in Texas. That's for sure.
Yeah, a lot.
I mean, you do like during the season, I'll probably do like 3 swings down there, right? Like 3 swings a year, probably. Yep. And then if you're lucky enough to do playoffs.
And when they had all the teams down here, yeah, you'd come down, you could make a week of it. And now
I
there's
would,
only
yeah.
one team.
Yeah,
But back then you'd do Houston, San Antonio, Austin, maybe go to
awesome.
Oak City. So you could stay here. But now it kind of changed. But
Yeah, I've had a couple of 9 days, 10 days down there. You do a swing and whatever. And one of the coolest ones, I was down there with Caval, and we rented a pickup truck. Big dog.
Did you wear a cowboy hat? I'd love a
we did
Southie
everything.
kid in a cowboy hat.
Everyththing was extra big that weekend. Whatever,
wear that down to Striggy's and have yourself a pop on L Street. See what happens.
Yeah, you wouldn't make it through the front door. No. Although Kelly did have the double swing doors like the old Westerns. Yeah.
Yeah, you come flying in there much like your father did a few times.
Well, he went flying out more than flying in, but whatever.
Well, that's true. A lot of us did. And before we really get into it, you mentioned Team Stripes. That's a great podcast. We've all been on. So you should check them out. Also, you should like and subscribe. Hit the like and subscribe button here on YouTube for us. Find us on the social medias. Make sure you give us a follow because, and you can type in Riley Sucks if you want. All you want, as long as you follow, like, and subscribe. Carl, before there's so much I want to unpack with you. And we didn't meet until that Monday night quarterback. And it was kind of like one of those, you and I are just kind of on that same wavelength. And it was like, damn, I wish we worked together back in the day, How did we like everyone who comes on, we like to hear, because everyone wonders, how the hell did you get into refereeing? Because everyone wants to play. Everyone wants to play in the NHL when they're growing up. Not many people outside of Gino and Chris Rooney said when they were kids, I want to referee. How did you find refereeing? Because you played in the Coast League and in a couple different leagues, the Sunshine League. How did you find refereeing?
So when I was 14, the long and the short of it is I lived Air Force brat, lived in Yokota, Japan with my dad. And we got moved back to the States at 10 years old. First time I skated was in Tokyo, Japan, in a big rink downtown Tokyo. First time on skates. I got back. I loved it. I was playing football. Mom said football was too violent. Play ice hockey. So next thing you know, like seriously, that's a true story. Next thing
that's awesome.
I'm playing ice hockey.
No, you need a weapon. Here you go.
yeah.
We're gonna have you play hockey where you can actually really injure someone with this stick. But anyways, and so I ended up playing hockey, and then I started officiating. Like I advanced pretty quickly. Started at age 10. By 14, I was playing travel, and then I started to officiate. And this is back in the day. You guys probably the pencils and the circles, and you had to mail in the tests. Like this is old school stuff.
Oh
and
yeah.
My mom helped me through all the testing because I was dumb as a box of rocks. I couldn't figure it out. So she basically took my test, got my patch. And I went out and ref. And so I did that from like 14 to 16. So for 2 years, I had a little taste of it. And I crossed paths with Timmy Nowak. He was out of Buffalo. And Timmy was on his way up and a couple other young officials. So I'd met Timmy, and he comes back into play later, which is kind of funny. But I just couldn't do it. At 16, I started playing junior and traveling, and I just couldn't officiate anymore. So fast forward to after I played in the Coast League, which Timmy Nowak officiated one of my games when I was playing in Erie on his way up through to the National League. He was lining in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I'm like, hey, Timmy, one of the times I got off the bench, I don't know how I got off the bench, but I got off the bench and made sure to say hi to Tim. Maybe in between periods. It definitely wasn't a shift. Right. So anyways, then I just kind of went into limbo. I got done playing, didn't know what to do, started coaching. And then the woman I was married to at the time's like, you don't get paid anything to coach. I'm like, well, they give me a little bit. And she's like, you don't get paid. Why don't you start officiating? You get paid. I'm like, okay. I did that. And then I got into officiating, probably back into it around 27, 28. And then just advanced through the youth levels real quickly. And then the OHL came into town in 98, I think, or 97, 96, 97 into Erie, Pennsylvania. And I had gotten into the North American Hockey League. That was my first taste of it. I was playing junior hockey. Officiating junior hockey somewhere in Michigan for Denny Parrish in the NAHL. And I went out and did a couple games there. I was terrible. I didn't know what two-line pass was. I didn't know what ditch icing. I mean, it was awful. I mean, I butchered it. And I'm sitting here going, I played, and I should get this. But I had no clue. Got through it, stumbling along, and all of a sudden, Erie shows up. They hire all the local first, and they weren't the best group that they had at the time. And so the next year, the OHL asked for some new guys. I ended up getting in through a third party. Someone recommended me, and now I'm working the O. And I'm like, this is cool, doing some other college stuff. And my buddy says, why don't you get in the East Coast Hockey League? Andy Van Helmen's running it. I said, all right, that'd be awesome. What do I do? Put together your hockey resume. So I put together a hockey resume and fax it. I faxed it. Like, this is how long ago this was. Put it in the fax machine, dialed the number. Off goes the fax. And then I'm told to give Andy a call. So I call him at set up time and introduce myself. And he says, all right, I'm looking at your resume. He goes, I see you played in the league. I said, sure did. He goes, all right, well, that's good enough for me. We'll get you 2 games in Dayton. We'll see how it goes. Like, literally maybe a 90-second call tops. And off I went. First game, Dayton, like, pro hockey. Welcome to pro hockey. Like, here's your jersey, here's your pants. Here's, like, boom, there you go. Get in your car, drive to Dayton.
Who'd you work with?
2 guys I did. I worked with, oh, golly. I don't want to bus drive these guys, so I'm going to leave the names out because it gets pretty hairy.
I will.
I can't do it. Yeah.
If you were in Dayton, I can actually make a guess. I knew who lived up there.
Well, it wasn't the first one that's always there. It wasn't the first one that's always there. But anyways, go out and first period, and I'm just in awe. We're at the Nutter Center. So we're not at the old barn. Like, I played in the old barn. We're at the Nutter Center where the college was. So it's a little bit nicer building. And the locker room is about the size of a neutral zone. It's huge. And so there's just 3 of us sitting in this little room. We go out, we do warm-ups. I come back in, everything's fine. We go to the first period. Everything's going along as Toledo's playing Dayton, kind of a rivalry game. Puck gets shot down. Guy high sticks it. I'm getting ready to shut it down for play with a high stick. Or no, actually, I'm sorry. I wave it. I'm like, no, we're good. Referee shuts it down. Player takes the puck, fires it into the glass because he's pissed. And the referee benches him. Or not benches him, gives him sports over the box. Big show. Guy loses his mind. Shit going everywhere. We come in after the first period. This big burly man comes in. He's got like a tweed jacket on. He starts taking off articles of clothing and then just spends the next 15 minutes yelling at these 2 guys. Beat red in the face, telling them how could they do this, like just screaming at them. And I'm just sitting there like motionless, trying not to be noticed. And then he walks out. And I'm like, who's that? And they're like, that's Hall of Fame linesman.
I know who it was.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know. I never met the guy.
I saw him do that. In the locker room when I was there one time.
Frightening.
It was the Bear, right?
Frightening. Yep, it was the Bear.
The Bear. Yeah,
yep.
Ron Asseltine.
The Bear.
He was awesome.
Ron Asseltine, the Bear. So we go out, we work the next 2 periods, game ends, come back in the room, boys open the sodas, want to have a beer afterwards, and he comes in and he's like, you do not earn those, and he proceeds to rip into the 2 guys again for another 30 minutes. And I'm just sitting there trying not to be noticed. By the time he gets done, honestly, it's been 20, 30 minutes. He just looks at me because I'm with my back to the door. So when he walked in, yells at these guys in front of me. And then when he walks by, he taps me on the shin pad and goes, nice job, see you tomorrow, and just walked away. That was it. It's the only thing he said to me. And I'm like, professional hockey. Are you kidding me? Like, is it going to be like this every night? Like, no clue. And that was my first game in the league. And I was like dumbfounded. But I had a blast. There was some wild stuff going on back then. I had guys javelin sticks into the stands. It was mayhem. I mean, you guys, you've worked it. You've seen it. It was Wild West out there. It was a completely different game.
I lived in Ontario, California for a season, and the West was totally different than the East. Like, the West, like, they were off of blood from start. Like, even in warm-ups, we had a couple of brawls. You know, like, as soon as that puck dropped, they wanted to kill each other. You go out East, they'll twirl around until the last 5 minutes, and then it's a game. And everybody starts yelling, screaming, and decide to take penalties. But It was totally different.
What's funny when I was, because I was in the Coast League right before you, Carl, and I think we probably overlapped.
Right.
We just didn't work together. But
Right.
you know, there was the North, there was the East, and there was the South at the time. And the North was just all skating, more so. The East was kind of a mix, right? They like Hampton Roads. They could skate you out of the building or beat the crap out of you. And then down south, you had the Ice Gators and the Birmingham and Biloxi, and they just beat the fuck out of each other. It was like, you know, chaos. So it was kind of it was kind of neat to see how the league kind of evolved a little bit. Like Gino, when you came in, it was a little different. And you know, when they added all those teams out west and became the ECHL, because they weren't only on the East Coast. But one thing that was I wanted to ask you about was, well, before I ask you that, what's funny about that story? Because we've all been there. Gino, you've had those. I've had a supervisor kick the barrel. I had one in the USHL. Scotty Zingerman came in the locker room one time and kicked the barrel and screams, "What the fuck game are you watching?" And I was like, "The same fucking one you're watching." And we got into it.
Did he have
Nowadays, yeah, they did. He always had jeans on. Nowadays, you have to almost handle, like, you couldn't do that nowadays because you'd have people crying in the locker room. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, you can't yell at these kids. Like, and my father yells at everybody, and everybody, like, he's like, you know, no wonder why nobody calls him, right? So like, he's like, well, I don't feel like getting yelled. Why didn't you call me? It's like, well, I'm not getting yelled at. I'll call Junior.
He yells at her. He does.
Yeah, you know, like, but you got to hand, like, but also, he doesn't relate to these kids. You look at the gap, the age difference, right? Like, even these college coaches now, you see all these young coaches having success, and all these, like, not to knock these older ones, but you know, they're stuck in their ways almost, or whatever, or they just can't relate to these kids right now because they are totally different. Like Carl, like, mentally, they're totally different than what we had to go through. There's so much more distraction that these kids have now than what we did coming up. Like, it's just different.
Well, Bill Belichick is a great example of that, right? I mean,
right.
he kind of lost touch with that young, you know, then he went out and got a 24-year-old girlfriend, and now apparently he understands college kids. And he's back in North Carolina. That's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. But
you can use that for a bit, dude. Is that a bit? Are you practicing bits?
No, you brought up losing touch. My mind went right there. I mean, you know, God love him. But I wanted to point out, because, you know, we have a lot of younger viewers, you know, and younger officials watch this. And to hear that, it's important to hear that because, you know, we go in and raise our voice, and it's like Gino just said, we shut down. Right. They don't realize that back in the day. And then after you got screamed at, you had to go out and ref the next period.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a great story to illustrate the difference between now and then. And I'm not saying then was better or now is better. I'm just saying that it's a different world that we live in, which is kind of cool. Well, cool in a way for us old guys that, you know, have been there and been, you know, had stuff thrown at us, you know?
Yeah, but you know what? Like, while you were getting it back in the day, you knew if you were horse shit. You knew if you deserved it. Like you said, if you wanted to stand up and say, wait a second, I'm watching the same freaking game you're watching, so get off my shit.
Right.
But nowadays, I wouldn't say it's coddling, but it's more, it's not as to the point. Like, you know, the situations they lay out, they don't prepare you, in my opinion. The way they go about it, like I heard one guy say, I bet you won't make that mistake again. And I'm like, that's it? I'm like, you shut play down because you thought there was too many men on the ice. Like, You won't do that again? Because I'm like, come on. Like, there's got to be some sort of, there's got to be a consequence. Like, you can't do that. Like, where was your head? What were you thinking? What was your thought process? Why didn't you go through this? You knew they were down 2 goals. Why didn't you talk together at the timeouts? Like, what's going on? Hey, maybe they pull the goalie. Like, there's got to be some sort of accountability and a way to go through it where you're not chastising these kids, but you're teaching them fundamentals and you're building a foundation for thought process. That's my opinion. I think that's difficult to convey when you're not able to rebuke them and say, what were you thinking? You kind of have to
100%.
water it down.
it's your thought process. Like, so we just had these two young girls do my daughter's game, and at the end, like it was just like two girls going, and from the sight line, from what she saw, it looked like our player pushed the blue player, but in reality, the blue player pushed the white player. And she calls it, but everybody, like, she puts her arm up, everybody's yelling and screaming at her, and this and that, and I'm like, oh geez. And I'm on the bench, right? So like after it was right at the end of the game. So like she got the wrong number, wrong person should have had it. She called the wrong penalty. So I asked her, I go, hey, just real quick, I go, what was your thought process on that last call? And I go, so like, what did you see? I go, and she walked me through it. She goes, oh, I saw white give a push. I go, actually, I go, from my sight line, I had blue pushing white, but I can see why you see that from your sight line. I go, when you watch it again, I go, I'll send it to you. But when you watch it again, you'll see what everybody else saw. And she also goes, I got nervous because everybody like all the parents are yelling. She goes, I lost the number. She goes, I didn't know. I go, you know what? I go, don't listen to them. I go, they're idiots. I go, what the hell do they know? I go, they're just yelling and screaming. I go, that's just noise. I go, just let them yell and scream. I go, you pay attention to what's going on and just focus in on, and have, a thought process, right? And that's how
you hit it on the head. You guys, you remember Troy G. Ward, right? Troy G.
Oh, yeah.
So Troy, he was a coach, and all of a sudden he becomes director of officials in the Coast League. And he had such a great perspective of things. And I remember he came in to supervise one of our games, and he came flat out and said, look, he goes, I'm not an official. I can't tell you what to call or how to call it. He goes, I have no idea. He goes, but I can tell you about perspective. I can tell you about preparation. I can tell you from point of view, and I can teach you these things. And so he says to us, like, when the team's offsides early on in the game, they're not mentally prepared. That's stuck with me for 20 years. Like, if a team unforced errors, they're turning the puck over. I had a game, Texas played Colorado Saturday night. They lost. There was 5-1 after the first. Wow. And I could tell they mailed it in. They just knew they mailed it in. Turnovers at the blue line, couldn't make passes, couldn't get out of the zone. Goalie was fighting the puck. Like, it just had all the signs that they just weren't prepared. And that brings me back to Troy's thing. But as a coach, what you said, Gino, he would say to the officials, he wouldn't yell at them. He'd say, hey, I got a question for you. And the officials would come over and he would start talking about them, about their positioning and their sight line. And he would say, do you think maybe if you got a little further up the line and took that extra peek, you might have had a better position to make a call? Maybe you would have seen something more. And these young kids are nodding their heads as he's walking them through it. And what he's doing is telling them they're lazy. Right. You're lazy. You didn't skate to the line. You didn't skate to the opening. You didn't fight through the players to get that point of view because you were lazy. But he did it in such a fashion where you were buying into it and you're nodding your head. And I'm with these young kids and they're nodding their head. And I'm like, he's just telling you you're lazy right now because you didn't fight for your sight line. And I think about that at the line when you get, as a linesman, you get stuck there and either you got to battle through the traffic on one way or the other, and that you got to fight for your line so you can see. And I think that's what the game's missing in the coaching for us, especially in our youth game, is getting to these younger officials and that ownership and that pride and that determination to make the right call, to be the best that you can be. That's my opinion of it. And I work with a lot of guys in Houston as much as I can, and we talk about these things. So.
Right. And you can't be like over emotional or under emotional. Like, you got to control your emotions because like sometimes it gets the best of you. Because like we had two good officials, really good officials this year, mess up a rule. And, they took a penalty, like a coincidental minor off the board when we had another minor on a goal scored. Like, that minor comes down, the coincidental stay, right? But first in, first out, that's all they kept saying. And, he was just all fired up, just yelling it. And, like, the rest of the crew kind of just like, oh, like he was just like the elephant, right? And you got to huddle. Everybody got to talk, have an opinion, everybody listen, right? And someone might say something, and then it would click, and then you get the 2-on-1, and then the 3-on, hey, 3-on-1 here, this is what we're going with, sorry. And that's kind of how you break things down a little bit, like come together as a crew. Don't be over, like sometimes I found myself overexcited out there, and I'd be yapping and, overskating the building or saying something too much, and, you got to really control your emotions.
You were excited, Gino?
Yeah, a little bit.
You got excited? Really?
That's why I like
didn't see that happening.
Ryan Hersey was like here, and I was here.
Yeah. No. I'm sitting here thinking, and I don't think time-wise and just, but it would be great because I was someone that coached and refereed and played, right? And each one has a perspective, like you just said, Carl. Everything's perspective, right? And so if I think more referees coached and saw the game from the bench and felt that frustration, right, that a coach would feel, and also see the different sight lines, and then, coaches refereed and saw what the referees were doing, I think it would completely change the dynamic between coach and player. And like I tell people all the time, you're going to the box to report the penalty. Like I say, you blow a penalty, you blow the whistle, count to 3, and then give your call, because you blow it and give the call real quick. The coach might be on the whiteboard. And then he looks up and he's like, why is my guy going to the box? So he innocently says, hey, ref, what do you got? And the ref thinks, you're questioning my call? And then it gets into this, whoosh, everyone goes off the handle. And it's like, you got to understand that they're seeing things different than you're seeing them. And it's a whole different, like we all have, those responsibilities within that game, players, coaches, and officials. And we could take it a step further and say parents, but parents are, parents are parents. They are what they are. I mean, some of them know what they're talking about. Some of them, would, be better off going and watching someone, play checkers. It's, it's whatever. But I like the fact that, like, the perspective thing, I'm sure that feeds into what you do with the coaching too, the mental coaching.
Oh, absolutely. So, basically the athletes that come to me, I want to say to date, 9 out of 10 of them, it's a confidence issue. That's their starting point. They've lost their confidence. Something's happened to them that they haven't been able to regain their confidence, whether it be mistakes that they overplay in their mind over and over again. Like you guys know as officials, like we're our own worst critics. We make a mistake and we hammer ourselves on it. And so these players, because they want to go to such a high level and compete, that they just beat themselves up and torture themselves. And next thing you know, the game's over, because they've just they made a mistake in the first period, and they've eaten that mistake and worn it for 3 periods. Then they're pouty. Then they're lazy. Then their shoulders are slumped. They don't, they just don't feel like doing anything. They're letting their team down. Then it just steamrolls. It gets worse and worse and worse. And so then their confidence takes a hit. And then when their confidence takes a hit, they just can't get it back through practice, through games. It snowballs. And for young athletes, it consumes them, I find, because everything is these extremes for the young athletes. It's like the end of the world. It's the worst day ever. One of the things I tell the athletes I work with, you can have a bad moment. You don't need to have a bad day. Right. And you hear people say, I'm having a bad day. You chose to have a bad day. Like if you had a flat tire on the way to work, you had a flat tire on the way to work. You got it fixed. That doesn't constitute a bad day. That's a bad moment. That's what I tell these athletes. The turnover, whatever it may be, like you were saying with your daughter, you stopped 11 out of 12. That's pretty darn good. You're worried about the one you let in.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything. The one that you let in is irrelevant. You stopped 11 out of 12. Hang your hat on that. Move on. That's a huge win. And that's what you want to let them know. It's a big win with what you did. And that's what I work with the athletes on, is that. But it's typically confidence is the big one. And then it's just going over the mind and setting it. We create a foundation for the athletes to perform. And that foundation's based on positive self-talk. Because too many athletes participate in a negative self-talk. And everything's bad, everything's terrible, everything's the worst, nobody's good enough. And the parents are all backbiting each other, and mom and dad this, and little Billy's got, the new greatest stick and the best skates, but he sucks. And it's just negativity. And it gets to the point where it's like, stop participating, like get out of it. And that's what I talk with these athletes about. The only thing you can control is yourself, your effort, your energy. That's it. Everything else is not up to you. So but I love doing it. It's passion. I don't know if you can tell I haven't stopped babbling since you asked me, but it's a passion. I love doing it with kids.
No, it's awesome and really applicable to life, right? I mean, one of my favorite books I recommend to everyone is Golf is Not a Game of Perfect by Dr. Bob Rotella. And, everything he talks about in that book can be applied to life. And, our experience is based on our reaction to it. Like flat tire is just, I love the fact that you said it's a bad moment. It doesn't have to define your day. It's just a challenge that you come into, and how you approach that challenge is, and again, Wayne Dyer, change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That flat tire might have saved your life if you were at a certain point on the highway instead of there, and a truck came careening across. Like, you don't know, the chaos that's being controlled by whatever it's being controlled around you. So it's such powerful stuff. I mean, and that's why I think I was, when I heard you talk the first time, I was like, man, this guy gets it. I love it, because that's what I try to teach my students. That's what you try to teach everyone is, calm down.
Right.
Life isn't that bad. It's just all we have is right now. What happened yesterday doesn't matter, and it's so important. It's a lesson I think everyone should learn.
So Carl, I love that bad moment, like not a bad day thing, and I just want to spin off that a little bit because as officials, you're going through the course of a game, right? And you just missed one, and you saw it, you just didn't react to it. I know what I do when I miss it and how I get back into the game. How do you get yourself mentally back, or what do you do during the course of a game to try to get yourself back when you you miss that hook or or what have you, just to get you back on track so the wheels don't fall off?
Funny you asked that question. I've had it happen. I just had an icing situation occur probably, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. Point of the game, player safety, right? That's the big thing to push with the hybrid icing, player safety. So I got a guy right on the Texas players, right on him. And I don't make the decision where I should have at the top of the circle. I'm I kind of froze for a second. Then I'm this guy's going to get pasted. I got to go with icing. And so make the decision. I determine the puck's going to cross the line. I hit the whistle. Buddy picks the puck up right before the goal line. And I'm so it's no longer icing because it never crossed the line because Buddy grabbed it. And I'm and my partner looked at me and he saw my face and he's like, it didn't cross the line. I'm like, nope. And he goes, center ice. I go, center ice. Yep. So I got everybody yelling at me. And I said, look, my first call is player safety. I said, this guy, he wasn't prepared. He didn't know what was happening. Just under the guidelines we play now, it wasn't a fair play. The guy might have got pasted. And I'm just like, hey, I screwed up. And I admitted it right away. I go, that's on me. I go, that's on me, 100% on me. My fault. I'll drop the puck. I take responsibility. And then I just let it go because I was like, you know what? I can't carry this. It doesn't matter. Because if I go the next period, the next game is just going to compound. And so I just let it go. And I think what helps me let it go is owning it, verbally owning it. Yeah, that's on me.
And accept
and guys, they get it when you say that because it kind of lets it go. And I was in Colorado with Austin Saturday night. There was a close line call. And I said, hey, it was 50-50. I said, you want to stop and start up again?
Yeah, right.
And the guy looks at me, I go, what are we going to do here? I go, I shut it down because it was offsides. In my opinion, it was offsides. You don't think it was. What do? We have a face-off, right?
I'll throw it. There you go. I'll throw it. Throw it in the end zone. Keep playing.
Yeah, what do you want me to do here? I'm a human, and I've said that to players. You're brutal. That's a terrible face-off. And I'm like, you ever try dropping a puck?
Yeah, right.
One kid looks at me and goes, huh? I go, you ever dropped the puck? At a game, he goes, no, never. I said, thank you. He goes, well, you're doing a pretty good job.
And I'll tell you, it's very scary because I had to do it in Allentown because someone got hurt, got knocked out, and me and Ritta 1-1 it, and I had to drop the pucks in the end zone. And I was like this. I was like, yeah, okay. There's not a fucking chance I'm standing there.
You pulled the pin on the grenade. You and you threw it in and ran.
Yes, come out.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, okay, there you go.
You were like, hey, guys, tap sticks 3 times, all right? Yeah. I'm going to be over in the corner.
It was a summer flip.
Yeah, just toss it in there. But I don't know. For me personally, I just own it. Even if I don't have to tell them, I'll recognize. And a lot of times we make mistakes and people don't even know it.
Right.
If you butchered something and people don't even get it, like a bad face-off or something. Right. And I recognize it and I just move on from it. I do make sure that I don't repeat it because if you continue to repeat the same behavior, you're negligent. Because either you're lazy or you don't give a shit. And I don't consider myself either one of the two. Right. So I recognize it and I just move on quickly. Back when I was officiating early on, I would like if I made a mistake in the first, I was dog shit all the way through the end of the game because I would keep replaying the error. Like, how did I do that? How did I miss that? Why wasn't I there? I mean, you guys have worked the big leagues. I mean, it's chaos, bedlam, semi-controlled, managed. You know, it's not like we have any control over what occurs out there. Our job is just to read and react. And if you're not focused on just reading and reacting and you're rigid and you're worried about your last call, your last thing, you're going to make so many more errors.
Oh, big time.
Like, when you get inside your own head, that's what I talk with the athletes about. If you're in your own head processing what to do, you're already behind the 8 ball. You're going to make a mistake versus just react. It's like that, like, boom, I got a penalty, arm goes up. You know, oh, that's offsides. But if you think about it, well, is that really a slash? I don't know if I want to call that. By the time you're done, like 6 other things have already happened, and what causes the problem, you already let go. So then you got to start figuring out, now what do I do?
Right.
Now I got to build, now I got to create something. And the other thing that I love is that the truth is one sentence. That's it. If you go to a coach and you start hubbubbing, well, you know, so this is what I had. And think about when you go to talk to a coach and he starts, like, it's either yes or no, black or white. Yes, it's a penalty or not a penalty. What do you want to tell me about? There's a turnover. I had to call a penalty, period. That's it. Put a guy in the box. So, I don't know. It's just ownership, in my opinion, and it comes with the experience. Just and cut yourself a break. Right. Cut yourself a break. You're never going to be perfect. You will never work a perfect hockey game
for perfection,
as long as you live.
That's it. Like I tell myself when, like, hey, don't miss the next one. Don't miss the next one, right? Even if it's on that same team that you just screwed, you have to call it, right? Even if it's a good, make sure it's a good one, right? Make sure it's a good one. So those are the things I tell myself. So you're not just picking off like something shit, and now you just missed one. Now you just called something shit, and now everybody's yelling at you because you called this shitty penalty, right? So now you're 2 in the hole. Right. So like now you really gotta stay mentally in it and make sure it's a fucking good one and just don't miss it. And like you said, I love the communication piece, right? Own it and say, hey, and they kind of leave you alone.
It's kind of like I always use if I call a shitty penalty, like I know it was bad, I shouldn't have put my arm up, and they're yelling or whatever. As if they don't score on the power play, which you hope they don't, right? I'll go over to the coach either after or like at the beginning of the next period and say, hey, coach, I thought about that one. That really wasn't my best hook call ever, and I'll be better this period, and right away that puts them, they're not, that aggression is gone, and that anger is gone because you just told them, yeah, you were right. That penalty sucked. But you're saying it in a way that, kind of communicates it a little better.
Yeah, and that mindset, I think, too. I'm sorry, Carl. I was just going to say that.
No, go ahead, Josh.
That mindset, I think, helps, too, probably, like, in comedy, because I know, like, coming from, like, a radio background, like, doing live radio, you got to have the mind of a goldfish. And like Carl was saying, like, nobody knows that you messed up, really, except for you, unless you make it, like, obvious. And like doing stand-up, like when I was new, and I'm sure, I'd still screw lines up or whatever. But in the beginning, like your first reaction is to be like, oh, I screwed that joke up. But nobody else knew that you did. You just got to keep moving. Yeah. So it's like that kind of mindset, I feel like you were saying, Riley, applies to like life, but also
everything.
Yeah.
Everything. In comedy, it's a great example because people say you're only funny as your last joke, right? And instant feedback. But if you go out and you allow, if you allow people to dictate how you feel about yourself, you're always gonna be struggling, and it's no different whether you're refereeing, whether you're doing someone's taxes, whether you're telling jokes, whatever you're doing. Right. If you don't have that positive mindset, you're just going to continue to fuck things up, and you're always going to be behind, and it's such an important thing, I think, for everyone to learn.
Yeah. And also like how Carl said, like, have you ever dropped a puck before? I think it was comedian, I don't know if you know him, Tom Dreesen. He was telling me that he was like nervous before a show one time, and Sammy Davis Jr. was like, listen, these are your boards. This is your stage. They're down there because they can't do this. You can. So it's like you got the stripes because you earned them.
On Chirping Zebras, mark down the date. We've quoted Sammy Davis Jr. I love it. I absolutely
work that
love
into
it.
the whole story there.
Yeah.
No,
Now
I love it. Go ahead, Rouse.
Yeah, I was gonna say you played in one of my favorite buildings in Knoxville for the Knoxville Cherokees. That was one of my
I
favorite,
did.
not necessarily buildings, although I had a few funny stories from there. The city was so much fun. I mean, it was just this crazy little football crazy town, and people parked on the highways for the fucking football games and shit. Like they just pulled over.
Yep.
It's just nuts. What was your favorite? What was your favorite barn to work in? Actually, as a player, but also as an official, where was your favorite barn?
You're not going to believe it. I don't know if you'll agree, but I loved working in the war in Johnstown.
Awesome.
Loved Johnstown. Absolutely loved it as a player. So here, this is hilarious. So I'm in Erie. I get called up for the playoffs. I'm a PTO, and they still didn't realize I was a fraud. So they're letting me play with the team. They're like, yeah, this kid's going to be all right. He's out of college, and so I don't get a lot of minutes, but I'm there. And so we go to Johnstown. On the bench is one of the Carlsons, got the long hair and everything. Oh, yeah. And I'm just like, I walk in the building. It is the exact same as Slapshot. My mom was alive, and I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I am in the rink where they filmed Johnstown. You will not believe this. The locker room was the same. The tile behind the Hanson, that's like Pet Rock. The walls were still the same. Everything was the same.
The garage doors that let the
jump
people
up.
in. Yeah. Everything.
It was all the same. And I was like, I'm like in awe. And this you had to jump off the cliff to get onto the ice. The kick plate was metal.
Yep.
The glass only 8 inches high on the sidewalls. No netting behind there. Yep, the box up where the Zamboni got hit. The guy got hit in the head with the puck. Like everything. Jim Carr's box. Joe McGrath's office. It's all there.
Everything.
So this is what everything. So we go through warm-ups, and I'm just in awe of this, and I'm skating around without a bucket because I can, first time ever. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And there's like 5 minutes left in warm-ups, and one of the guys grabs the nets and pulls it out to the hash marks. Like, what's he doing? And so then all of a sudden when it starts hitting crossbars up into the stands, it's hitting the fans. They're hitting crossbars to hit the fans. I'm like, are you kidding me? And these guys are getting picked off. Like up in the stands, all of a sudden pucks off the bar, bang, guy goes down. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm watching this, and guys are going at different angles. Like nobody's safe. If you're behind the net, you're not safe. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is messed up. I can't believe we're doing it to these guys. And then next thing I know, here comes the eggs. They're throwing eggs at us. And our goalie takes an egg right in the face, blows up in his mask. And I'm like, no wonder we're shooting pucks at these cocksuckers. They're throwing eggs at us. And so that was my indoctrination to Johnstown. And then, I don't know, I played 3-4 years. I think I made it 5 or 6 years later. And then nothing changed when I came back 6 years later, 7 years later. But this was back in the day when I could hang out and drink with the players, go to the players' bars, be with the players, do all this stuff. I was in my early 30s at the time, so I was out with these guys hanging out. I loved Johnstown. I went to all the same bars as the guys went. I mean, it was back in the day where you just played and then you went out and drank together. Then you went back and officiated. Nobody cared. You didn't have to be worried about where you crossed the line. It was just you'd see the guys and whatever happened on the ice stayed out there. Nobody cared. And it was a small town feel. You go to the Sheets gas station, you go to the same restaurants as all the guys. You would go to the country club afterwards. It was the deal. I was talking to Perry Florio, who's a buddy of mine now, who played for the Chiefs, and he loved it too. Like all the guys that I knew loved it. So I'd have to say Johnstown because I got a picture of me in front of the dog with my linesman sweater on. Did the whole thing.
What's the story with that fucking dog?
Exactly. I got a picture of the fucking dog right there. It's on the wall.
That is so
It's
cool.
me and my buddy. It's hilarious. But It was. I think it was just because I grew up. That was the big movie at the time, and then I got to go to that and work so many games in that building. I must have did 100 games in there. I think the big rivalry was Wheeling Johnstown. They played each other 13 times a season. In 1 year, I worked all 13 games in both barns. So
Wow.
I don't know. For me, that was that was beautiful, just because all the nostalgia. Because you couldn't walk out there without quoting the line, and I think they even had a French goalie at the time for Johnstown that was playing at one point. So that was even funnier, So
Denis
I
Lemieux.
don't know. For me, yeah.
We start quoting that movie. We're not going to stop.
Like that.
No.
We're not going to stop. That rink. The other thing that Johnstown did for everyone didn't matter. You went to that building and instantly you were better looking. It just was the case, right?
The guy that came up to scrape the ice was had a mullet and couldn't ankle bender. It was absolutely hysterical. My parents came with me for that my first time. Yeah,
that is not a deep gene pool. I'll tell you that. No. I mean, they're skimming right off the top. And
I remember walking through the crowd and this little kid flipped me off, and then I looked up, I go, "Where's this guy's mother?" And no teeth, she's flipping me off, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
That was we talked about that today, Carl, on the phone. That was a building that you had to walk through the concourse. Not only through the you had to jump up and then walk through the section.
Yes.
You had to walk through a section and then go out through the concourse to the referee's room.
Awesome.
I mean, that's when my famous story of the woman that yelled, "Riley, you need glasses," and I was like, "You need a dentist." And she charged me. The ref was the cops. They were like, "She almost got to you. She wasn't a small girl." And it was just insane, absolutely insane. So I love the fact that you chose the War Memorial, man, because I think that everyone loved going to that rink. I think everyone enjoyed it at least once.
It's the coolest thing ever. If you're a hockey fan, that is that's the rink. It's awesome.
That's the dream. So here's one real quick funny story. So one day I'm there. It's like a Friday. There's a parade of people walking down the street to go to the rink because the war's on the back of that river, whatever's back there. It's backed right into it.
Yep.
All these people are walking down. We're driving to the game. Someone's wearing a McCracken jersey. There's the blondes with the Chiefs. There's all these people here, and I can't figure it out. So we pull around back. We pull in, and the old Paul Mustang's GTO's parked on the concourse. It's Chiefs reunion night. Hammerhand was there. All the guys were there. The blondes were there at the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the goalie, the Hammerhand, I guess he's Chester Cheetah or something. The voice of Chester Cheetah. It's hilarious, but they're all there. And they go out to drop, and Tim Dr. Hook McCracken's there. He's got the jersey on. I mean, I was in awe. It was just starstruck. So that's my building.
We had Peter Burrell on episode, I think it was 37, who was one of the associate directors of the movie Slapshot, and he had great behind the scenes stories and different pranks that Paul Newman pulled. I mean, that was if you haven't watched that episode 37, go check that out. Peter Burrell, he was awesome.
I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, it's really great stuff. It's really great stuff. Now, we've all had the shit show, right? We've all had the dumpster fire. We've all had the line brawl. Gino and I have had plenty. And mine held the penalty minute record for 10 years in the East Coast League, 304 minutes. What was your biggest shit show game that just was out of control?
Unfortunately, I have to say it just frickin' happened. In Division One club hockey. You put me on the spot here, you bastard. Oh,
you sent me a video of this one. Was this the video?
I know. Why did you have to bring it up?
I forgot.
Hey, we got to put this in the reel.
Yeah. Oh, it's unbelievable.
God. Oh, Jesus. So, yeah. All right, first let me quantify this by saying I was the referee. I wasn't the linesman. If I was the linesman, it wouldn't have got to be a shit show. I'll tell you that right now, because I would have broke everything up. But as the referee, So there's 59 seconds left. It's a great hockey game all the way through. They're battling through it. I mean, we're letting them play, and they're loving it. So OU scores an empty net around OCU. It's an Oklahoma University game. So right down to the wire, all of a sudden OU scores an empty net. OCU has 9 graduating seniors who basically next stops men's league hockey.
Yep.
So these 9 guys all figure that on the next face-off, 5 of them are out there that aren't playing hockey next year anywhere other than men's league, and they just go right after the OU kids, complete shit show, brawl. Everybody's going at it. One guy's getting pummeled, so there's a 4-man system. 2 linesmen are in. I'm watching this guy get pummeled. I'm like, I need to do something. So I hop in, do the linesman training. I hop in, break up the fight excellently. No issue there. And then I hear a big roar out of the crowd. Still finish where I'm at. We get everything separated. Go to the box. I'm talking to the crew, figuring out what we're going to do. And I said, yeah, we had a goalie fight. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, we had a goalie fight. I had no idea there was a goalie fight because I'm in the middle breaking up fights. No idea this happened. And so I'm like, are you kidding me? And they're like, no. And then I watched the video, which I sent to Riles, and this got this announcer who's like a giddy little schoolgirl. First time he's been losing his mind. Oh, we're going to get a goalie fight. Oh, we're going to get a goalie fight. And he's screaming at the top of his lungs. And these 2 guys take the helmets off, get next to each other, and just start flailing away. This guy's still screaming like a little girl while we're having a goalie fight. They just pan down on the goalie fight. I mean, if you watch this, you'll want to piss your pants listening to this guy just scream about it. And the 2 goalies fight. One guy goes down. The other guy falls on top of him, gives him a push. Then they get up, shake hands, and leave. And that was it. And I missed the whole thing. If it wasn't for the video, I would have no record of it.
Good thing for video.
No idea it happened. So afterwards, that was one of those deals where you guys have had them. I just went in the locker room, and there's a couple good friends that are up there, Chip Excel and Chuck and Schemmel, and I sat in a room and I was just shaking my fucking head. I'm like, how does this happen? Like, just made me sick. Like, it's one of those things you couldn't wash it off. I couldn't take a shower long enough to get that filth off me. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
That's like
I was so pissed off about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so pissed off about it.
18-pack.
Oh, God, I couldn't tell you how mad I was because it was just bullshit. And you know what? Here's the next thing. I handled it the way I needed to handle it because I had one team that was the aggressor. I don't give a shit who's listening to this. I made the calls that I decided to make. I gave 2 fights for the goalies because that was obvious. I gave everyone else 10s. I just gave everyone else 10s because the OU kids got somewhere to play for. The OKC, the other team, they didn't give a shit. You know, and I was like, I don't care. And apparently it came up where I didn't do the right thing. I should have gave everybody fights. And I'll put my reputation on it. I don't give a shit. That's not what was happening. This other team was going to take these kids out of the opportunity to play for a national championship potentially because why? So what do I do? Give all one-man fights?
Got instigated into the fighting. So they had to defend themselves, right? So it's like,
yeah.
All right, well, let supplemental discipline take its course. Like, yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, I just gave everybody 10s, kept eliminating guys with 10s, and then just finished the game.
You get the first 2 knuckleheads.
Yeah, I just felt dirty.
Right?
Yep. That was the only one that was big. But yeah, that was the worst one. Like the ones that I had as a linesman in the Coast League, the other brawl, it was kind of fun to be around, you know, because it just happened. But this, I don't know, I just still can't shake it. Still makes me sick to talk about it.
So I just acted as your therapist. I allowed you to get that out without even knowing it. I actually just helped you process what just happened. There's nothing better than a goalie fight. No, see, I'm here for you. This is what I do.
I had a player fight a goalie once. Tim Spencer.
That's unusual.
Yeah, Tim Spencer fought Plant up in, it was early on. Leon Stickle was in the building. I think it was like a 2-cigar night for him. But yeah, so Spencer comes in and he cuts the net and he hits the butt end of the goalie and he goes flying into the boards. So I kind of turn. I'm like, like I see him go to the boards. I'm like, what the hell happened? So I go up ice and I just hear the crowd like erupt, and I turn back, and there I go. I just see Spencer just feeding the goalie. I was like, you got to be shitting me.
I think that just happened with the Maine Mariners not too long ago. I'm not sure what happened on the play, but it was just a clip of I think a player hit one of the other players hit the main player, and the goalie was like, "No one's going to do anything. I'll drop the gloves with him," and he did, and they kind of went at it for like a good chunk of time.
There's a midnight game. There was a midnight game somewhere. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Josh, midnight Mariner game or something. Yeah, I didn't see the whole clip, but I think that's where it came from.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it was.
Is that like midnight mass? They do a midnight game? Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah. Also, we should have one with the Blackhawks.
It's 2-for-1 beer night as well. What could go wrong?
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. The concessions stay open a little later that night. I love it.
Right.
There really isn't. I mean, we've all seen goalie fights. I mean, and I love when it happens. It's just kind of, one of those things that you don't see every day.
It just happened in the Southern League too.
Well, Chris Henry had the game where only the goalies fought. There was nothing else going on. And the two goalies, they just came out of the net and met at center ice and fought. And there was nothing going on. There was no scrum. There was nothing. They just came out and were like, fuck it, let's go. I mean, that was just delicious. Oh, absolutely delicious. So I'm glad we worked through that college game for you there. We'll play that video for sure. We'll show that. But the guy's call was great. The guy's call was excellent.
Wasn't it hilarious? The guy was losing his mind. Like, first fight ever. Like, I swear he wet his pants.
He definitely did. He definitely did.
Losing his mind.
Yep. He was very excited about the goalie fight.
Ross knew I was in Oklahoma because I talked to him the next day, and he goes, I said, I kind of have a shit show. He's like, yeah, and he sent me the clip right away.
Of course.
He'd already seen it. He sent it to me. I'm like, great, thanks. I go, so it's out there? He goes, yeah, I was out there last night. I'm like, great.
That's awesome.
The thing. Like, think about the stuff that we did 15 years ago. You had to get a VHS tape and and go to like Best Buy and plug it in and watch it because you didn't have a VCR at the Red Roof Inn we were staying at.
Right.
It's so true. And you had to mail the tape in. You had to mail it in if you had to go somewhere. The coach was like, I'm sending the tape in. I'm like, I'll pay postage. It's like, because it was just so stupid. And then the video was terrible. I mean, it was from way up. All grainy. You couldn't tell shit.
Yep.
It was like it just absolutely. I mean, I know I would have probably been an Instagram star back in the day with some of the games I did, because holy shit, there was plenty that went on. I'll tell you that.
Right. Yeah. You'd be the weapon of mass destruction.
I was gonna say, Sweeney bet
the cell phone would have crushed you, Riles.
Oh God, yeah.
The cell phone would have crushed you.
The cell phone would have been my downfall. My downfall would have happened 25 years earlier than it did. All right? let's just put that out there. That cell phone would have ruined me forever. And I won't get into details, but there's some things I wish I had a video of, and some of them are in the movie script that you're reading that you got into penalty box that someone should make or invest in. Throw that out there, but some of them are in there, and one of them happened in Knoxville when I was naked outside with the coach of the locker room. I know I should tell that story without saying I'm just naked in the locker room. It was on purpose.
We'll just clip that and not include the story.
I was showering. I've told the story before, and if you haven't ever heard it, it does sound kind of weird. But the coach, Barry Smith, was the coach, Carl. And Barry came over and knocked on the door, and I was in the shower. And Johnny O'Brien said, hey, Barry's at the door. He has a question. So I walked over the door, soap still in my hair, soaking wet, naked. And I opened the door, and he went to step in. And I said, no, we'll be out here. And I stood there with my arms folded, water dripping off me while he's going on and on about a trip and a hook and a hold. The South Carolina Stingrays are all leaving, watching this, laughing their ass off, right? And Smith ends his tirade, and I go, "Hey, coach, let me ask you a question." He goes, "What?" I go, "You want to look down, don't you?" And he told me, "Fuck you, Riley," and walked away. And I went back in, John. He said, "How'd that go?" I go, "Swimmingly." Fine. That's why I love that building.
Major League.
Oh my God.
Unreal.
That's priceless.
Gino, you were going to say something about Sweens? Sweeney got.
Gosh. Oh no, I said no.
He benched the coach.
Oh no, he benched the coach one night because he kept yelling, "I'm sending the tape in. I'm sending the tape in." He goes, "Hey, we don't do tapes anymore. They're DVDs. You see tape one more time."
And he did.
Don't give him an ultimatum. You have to call it, right?
Oh yeah, you have to. But Sweeney had a point. You know, you got to stay up with the times.
Great point.
Right? You know.
Steve Martinson too, really neat guy.
Yeah,
That's
now we're
outstanding.
screwed. It's like instantaneous. It's like after it happened, it's already out there.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
from where we used to be. Like you're instantly. Everyone knows, and you got
Sometimes
buddies
before you
texting
get
and
off the
laughing
ice.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes,
no, you're
right?
right.
Well, they
Exactly.
have the tablets. They have the tablets on the bench. And they're like, I just
Yep.
watched it. And it's like, well, I did too. Like, I saw it live, though. All right? It's just absolutely
Right.
ridiculous. Ridiculous.
It's
Well,
entertaining.
it's all about the entertainment, right? I mean, that's what we do here. Before we wrap up, I give a little bit more on your on the mental edge method, Assassin mental edge method, because I think it's such a great service that you have. All right, and I'm sure it has affected tons and tons of athletes. But tell people where they can find out about it, where they can find you, and give just a little bit of a more information about it, because I find it a fascinating thing.
Yes.
Sure. So again, it's Assasyn, which is ASASYN, mentaledgemethod.com. And pretty much when you put in mental edge method, you're going to come up with mental performance, things like that. There's not a lot of mental performance coaches out there because, again, I'm seeing so much with starting at U14s, AAAs, and things like that. Kids are progressing physically, but mentally they're not there. And everyone's putting their money into buying the best sticks, the best skates, the best coaches, paying for the furthest place they can go to travel, all those types of things, but they're not preparing the athletes to go to these locations mentally. So they're not prepared to leave schools, to isolate themselves, to put the 100% effort into sports. That means you're sacrificing friendships, relationships, because you're just putting yourself all in to get to the next level. And what happens if it doesn't get there? Like, how do you help the athletes prepare? And that's where mental performance training comes into play, because it helps balance these athletes. And when I talk to parents, the very first thing I let them know is that I'm not here to get your kid to the NHL. I'm here to make a good human being. I want him to be able to function well in society no matter what happens. Because if you're a piece of garbage going through life, like, no one wants to deal with you. No one wants to be around if you have a bad attitude, if you're bitter all the time. I don't want to be around people like that. Those are the people I distance myself from. So what I tell them I'm looking to do is just create a good human being and help them progress through life, because you're going to have a bad boss. You're going to have shitty coworkers. You're going to have people you don't want to deal with. It's just going to happen, just like with teammates. And so what we do is we just go over, like, just basic skill sets, like learning to communicate, learning to express yourself without being an asshole. You can tell someone you don't like them, but you don't have to tell them flat out. Maybe you don't get along with them. It's okay to disagree. And when we talk about that as officials, we always tell the coaches, like, hey, look, this is nothing personal. Like, this is just a call. This is a job. Like, I'm doing my job, you're doing your job. And getting the athletes to recognize that it's not personal. That little Billy, wanted to score more goals than you. It's not personal. He's just driven differently. And coaches are making decisions at these levels that 14-year-olds can't comprehend. They think that they're not liked. They didn't get picked for the team because they're not liked. And that's not true. You didn't get picked for the team because maybe you weren't a good fit. Maybe you were the most talented athlete out there. However, your mental side, you were just miserable to be around, and you weren't a good fit with the rest of the group. And that's why you weren't chosen. You didn't get to be the captain this year because we didn't think you were mentally ready yet. So we picked a kid that's been around. He's not as you, but he's going to wear the C. And for kids, it's crushing because they're fragile. Because if you think about their upbringing all the way to that point, mom and dad have provided everything. They've provided everything for them. They've gotten them food. They've gotten them shelter. They've gotten them clothing. They take them to practice. They take them to school. They take them everywhere. They're coddled. Then you start getting 14, 15, 16. You're starting to compete. And the mentality changes. I know when I officiate 14 AAA, I got kids with beards and mustaches at 14. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, they like full-grown adults. I have to ask them, like, did you guys carpool to get here? Like, who drove? You know, it's wild.
Do you have child support payments?
Exactly. But physically they're there, but mentally they're not. Because when you go back to it, it's still like, you know, he hurt my feelings. I'm pissed. I'm gonna two-hand the guy. I'm gonna let my temper get the better. They don't understand those things. And so what I work with these athletes is just about controlling the controllables. That's a big term that we use, which is your energy, your effort. Anything outside of that, you can't control. And I love what you said, Riles. Like, everything happens for a reason. Like, you got a flat tire, but you know what? Maybe if you didn't have that flat tire, you would have been hopping down the road and going 75 and you blew the tire and then the car just flipped. You don't know that. Or you got caught at a light and you tried to push through the light and you got stuck, but that saved you from this. The other thing that, funny you say that, Gino, karma in hockey and karma in life works out. And I find myself when maybe I, like, for example, I didn't call an icing and a team got pinned in their end for a minute. And they didn't get scored on, but they got pinned in a minute. And the coach makes sure to let me know that the reason why they're in that end for the minute was because of me.
Oh, yeah.
And then they'll go out and get a power play goal, and they'll get something will happen like 10 seconds later, and they'll score. And I'll be like, is that because of me too? Like,
I use that one. I love that.
Things work themselves out under hockey karma, the hockey gods. Like, it just, you need to let life happen. You need to participate. You don't need to project. You don't need to let things know the way you want them to happen. Life is going to happen. It's your job to adapt. And that's the biggest thing I teach these athletes is you need to adapt to what happens out there. When you adapt, you become better because circumstances change on a regular basis as an athlete. When players make different decisions, you're not able to decide what they do. You just decide how you react to it. And by training your mind under the different scenarios, you know, oh, if he does this, I do that. But you're reading off of them, and that's where you get to the read and react. And I just think it's so overlooked, especially where I find at 14, the kids are starting to progress physically, where mentally they're behind. And what you have is, and I call it the Johnny Manziel deal, you got a guy that's 21 years old and has a pile of money. And unfortunately for him, there wasn't anyone to stand up and tell him, like, no, that's a bad decision you're making. Or maybe they were just too far into it to agree with him. And you need to offer direction to these athletes. And unfortunately, mom and dad, the kids don't think mom and dad have it together anymore. Mom and dad can't direct me anymore. They don't get it. So they stop listening to their parents. And then I may talk to the athlete and I say the same things, but it resonates with them because of my experience. Because they're like, oh, he played, he officiates, he gets it. For mom and dad may be offering the same information, but they look at it from the perspective of a guy who played or who has experience. They're like, oh, okay, I like what he says. And I never contradict the parents. I'm always transparent with the parents. I let them know what's going on. They can participate when they like. If there's anything that's alarming, I alert them. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm someone that's here to help the athlete through my experience and the things that I've encountered. And I like to offer to these athletes the knowledge without the experience. Because I can tell them, like, if you go down this path, it's going to end terribly. You need to trust me on this because I know that, you know, if you start drinking at 16, 17, you know, by the time you're 19, 20 in the world we live in with hockey guys, you're going to be over the edge. You're going to be having, you know, so those are things I can talk to them about and maybe the parents can't. So it's just important to be able to mentor and help these athletes. And that's what the passion comes from me. And with the Sasyn mental edge method, it's just getting the word out and it's breaking the barrier because so many people are, I wouldn't say afraid of it, leery of it. They don't believe in it. They just think that little Billy's going to be fine doing what he's doing and he's going to make the NHL. What happens when he doesn't make the NHL and he's 21 years old and he doesn't know what to do and he doesn't have a job? Where do you go from there? And so it's just real important that you work with these kids to give them an opportunity to progress in life and become good human beings. And that's where mental performance comes from. It stems into life. And My goal is just to get my name out there to help as many people as possible and be as valuable as I can so people don't repeat some of the mistakes that we made. That's all.
And I'll
It's
tell
awesome.
you, I'll tell you, Carl, a third party, like it's so crucial to like teenagers too, right? Someone that they trust. And my father did this quite a bit. Like looking back, I reflect back on my childhood and growing up. And my father did this a lot through people that I trusted that were mentors to me. I had a lot of them like around the Southie neighborhood, and like guys my father grew up with. Like I was close to them. My father had me at a young age, so like I was close with all his friends, and I was reffing with them all. And he would always send whatever message wasn't getting through from coming from him to me, he would send it through them. And I think what you're doing is so valuable because it might resonate to a kid where if a parent's saying it, you're like, shut the fuck up, like, but you're saying it and you're like, oh wow, okay, yeah. And it kind of registers to the kid. So I mean, I commend everything you're doing. I mean, I think it's great.
Have you worked with any referees or officials, Carl?
I'm working with one. I am working with one official right now, and So it's weird. I'm in a weird place in my career where you've got guys that are 40 guys who you really can't offer direction. If I get some younger guys come through that are willing to listen, I will make some comments. And I think I told you guys on the pod on Monday Quarterback. If you'd like my opinion, if you'd like my perspective,
right.
and they're open to it, I'll share it with them. But some guys are too busy pumping their own tires. You can't get through to them, so I don't even bother with those guys. But I am working with one or two officials right now, working with one pro guy and working with a couple other local guys. So I would like to expand with officials. I really would like to give back. My goal is to make this my full vocation. That's all I do is a mental performance coach. Right now I've got a day job still and I spend all my evenings coaching. But when I get to a point, and I still give back. I mean, guys need help. I never say no. If someone says, hey, I need to go over something, like 100%, I'm always available and to a fault. But I want to help people. I want to help. And so I've got a couple guys here and there, but if you ever come across a guy that's hung up or needs some advice or anything like that, I'd feel free to share my name. I would always make time to talk to a fellow official.
That's awesome to hear. It's a great thing, and we do need more of it. And as I'm listening to you, like taking the personal stuff, my Bible is the 4 Agreements. I try to live by the 4 Agreements, the book of the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. Actually, no, not Jr., the senior. And, not one of those agreements is don't take anything personally because it's all just perspective. And I think as officials, not as humans, but as officials, you can't take anything personally because if you do, you're going to spend the whole game just, defending your honor or your ego, right? You can't take anything personally because sometimes the coach is yelling because he can't yell at his kids. He can't yell at his team anymore because they're getting, they're getting pumped, and 6-0, and he's pissed off and he's got to show his kids, I'm still fighting. You got to keep fighting. Right. So he yells at you because who else is he going to yell at? And it's like that. You got to learn that. And I think that's a learned skill, and it's something that you have to practice and you have to kind of be exposed to. And the younger you're exposed to it, the better, I think. I think this is stuff that should be taught in middle school. I mean, I think it would change the whole dynamic of everyone, the whole society. If people learned, control what you can control, don't take anything personally, and don't give a fuck what other people think. It's just their perspective, So I love it.
Definitely takes a long time to learn that because I feel like I didn't really get that. Maybe until like about 30.
Well, you were 20 years ahead of me. I got it at 50. So I started learning it at 50. So you're way ahead of me. So yeah. Now if we can apply this to Gino and dogs, we'll be all set. Because he does not like Frankie Chirps, the official mascot of Chirping Zebras, and I don't understand. Carl, we got a thing with Gino and dogs. He's not a fan.
Last year, and I don't know.
I know that's not funny, but the fact that you got bit by a pit bull is not funny. What's funny is you're afraid of my 4.8-pound dog. That's what's funny. And I only do this because we're not in the same room because you kick the shit out of me if we were. So I take my shots when I can, you know?
From a distance.
Yeah, that's all. Well, this has been awesome, Carl.
Well, this has been awesome, but I want to leave this whole like conversation with something that that I talked to a couple officials about this, like past, like reflecting over the season and playoffs and all that kind of stuff, and what's the difference between people, and like communication was one of them, right? And I like you should be humble when you're out there, and be humble when you're talking to coaches, and not be aggressive and matter of fact, right? Like sometimes when like they're going down on a 5-on-3 and they're calling you over, you can't be like, hey, yep, that girl tripped her, blah 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 blah, boom boom, we're out, boom. You can go over and be humble and say, hey, unfortunately, yeah, hey, you're not gonna like this, but yeah, she did trip her. I had to call that. It's it's automatic, right? Be a little humble, show a little humility when you're talking to these coaches, and sometimes it gets it will register a little bit, and it's not personal, and and maybe when you're a little aggressive, it's just taking the wrong approach, right? And just take a deep breath, get on your level, don't be overexcited, and be humble. That's how I want to leave it.
Well, that's well said, Gino. I love that. From my angle, that's my favorite.
That.
It's my favorite. From my angle, it was a trip, Coach. I'm not saying it was a trip, but I'm saying from my angle, it was a trip. From your angle, it might not have been. And that way, you're not telling him he's wrong. Because he might be right, and you might be wrong. But from your angle, from my angle, it was a trip, Coach. And
Exactly.
that's all I can do is call from my angle. I don't have all the cameras the NFL has, So great stuff tonight. Kyle, this has been awesome. Just
No, thank you.
just to get the
Really
message
good being
out.
on with you guys.
Yeah, if you if you have an athlete or yourself, find Sasyn Mental Edge Method. Find Carl. He's obviously, if you're watching, you know how great he is. So, Carl, we appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome. Really has. This podcast just keeps getting better and better, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
From your angle.
If you're asking from my angle, this thing's fucking awesome. I love it. Well, we want to thank our sponsor, the Referee's Crease, your one-stop shop for all your refereeing needs. Also want to thank AOA Studios. We also want to remind you to like and subscribe. Smash that like and subscribe button. Find us on all the social medias, the Facebook, the Instagram, and of course the TikTok. And give us a follow. Let us know what you think. We had plenty of comments on Mike Hanley's take on his Albert Bell story. That thing's blown up.
Finally,
I know. I loved it.
Comments. It drives me nuts. Like,
I love it.
I couldn't do it as a referee. I could never look at Twitter or anything. My wife would like send me stuff, right? I'm like, don't send me that. Like, I don't even want to read it because, like, if I read it, I know it's bullshit anyway. But it just fucks you up for like that 5 minutes, and then you move on. So,
Well,
that's why I don't do the comments.
I loved your comment today. If you haven't seen it, go to Instagram and Gino kind of lit some people up. I love it. But let us know if there's anything you want to talk about or have us talk about, and we will do so. So, episode 52 coming to a close, and we again, Carl Sasyn, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sasyn Mental Edge Method.
If
Josh
anybody would like
Dolan.
to sponsor a podcast, please reach out.
Yes, we are open for sponsorship. Absolutely. If you like what you're watching, why not back it financially? That's what I say. And but for Josh Dolan, our producer extraordinaire, Gino Binder Jr., my partner, I'm Mark Riley. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time right here on the Chirping Zebras.